All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for High Caliber Shipping, a rapid fire logistics Q&A with Hornady. My name's Taylor Puelka, and I head up alliances and marketing for Varsity Logistics, and I'm going to be your host today. So before we jump in, as we're talking, if you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to just submit them in the Q&A box. You should see that. There's also a chat as well. And we have a bunch of team members behind the scenes looking at those and collecting them. And we'll either address them live at the end or follow up after if we run out of time, which could happen because I think this is just like a really amazing discussion that we're going to have today. So without further ado, let's introduce who's joining us today. Charlie, why don't you kick us off?
Great. Thank you, Taylor. My name's Charlie Hawkins. I'm with Varsity Logistics in the sales department, and I have 35 plus years experience in the TMS and the shipping software industry.
I'm Tom Reaver with Varsity Logistics. I think I've been with Varsity for over 25 years now. I head up the business development side of Varsity, and I also help out during implementations and pre-sales services. Happy to be on the call today.
All right, and I'm Renae Hornady. I'm the Director of Sales and Logistics at Hornady Manufacturing.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. So today's session is designed to be fast-paced, like the title. We're going to move through some real-world scenarios, decision points, and lessons learned, and focus on what really happens when your shipping operations scale really quickly. So let's jump right into the meat and potatoes. And Renae, I'd like to start with you to set the foundation. So before we get into some of the specifics and the nitty-gritty, let's talk about Hornady itself. So for those of the audience who don't know who Hornady is, who are you, and where is your shipping operation as it stands today at a high level?
Okay. Hornady is a family-owned business, privately owned. We manufacture bullets, ammunition, reloading tools, and as well as security products. So for those of you who don't know the difference between bullets and ammunition, bullets is just the part that flies down the barrel, and then ammunition is the loaded cartridge that goes in your firearm. We ship domestically and internationally with a global reach. We ship to every continent with the exception of Antarctica because there's no people there. But one of the things that makes our shipping unique is that in addition to shipping large pallets of product to retailers and distributors all across the world, we also ship consumer goods. So we ship off of our website, t-shirts, hats, things like that. And we also have a warranty department for our reloading equipment. And so therefore we're shipping small parts and pieces to individual consumers as well as big pallets.
Wow, that sounds like a super complex environment managing all of those different things. And it's like one of those things, at least for me, that I don't think about gets shipped, much like, I don't know, batteries. I don't think about that often. So that's really interesting. I want to ask, so you kind of painted that full picture of high level, how Hornady is shipping today. How did you get there? And what has changed the most over time? If you do some like quick numbers.
I would tell you, I've been here 28 years. And so I started in the IT department, which most IT department folks don't transfer to sales. And so with that gave me a lot of insight as to how our systems work internally, which really helps me run both the sales and the logistics departments. But one of the things that we focus on is new products. And so we always want to give that consumer who's going into a Bass Pro or a Shields, we want to give them the reason to go into that store. So we offer new products every year that keeps that consumer saying, hey, I wonder what they've done now, and gives our customers a reason to have that consumer go in their store. And so we've had a huge brand following over the last 15 years where our brand has just grown organically. But then also there's lots of things that have happened in both politically as well as events that have happened that have created an environment where that customer is trying to protect their Second Amendment right, and they might be scared that they can't buy ammunition right when they want it to. And so you combine those two with brand recognition and our overall brand just growing. We've seen our business grow 10 times the size over the last 10 to 12 years of what it was then.
That's amazing. And I remember when we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, there was talk about how Hornady's leadership had to shift their focus because of this rapid expansion. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely. So several years ago, even before we got really crazy busy, we put the focus on sales and shipping, outbound logistics, because if you can't sell it, you sure aren't going to ship it. But if you can't ship it, then you're not selling it, right? So those two departments became the priority, with working hand in hand with manufacturing. So there's a lot of companies, no matter what they make, but especially in our industry, where production makes what they make, and then the sales team has to go sell it. And we don't have that philosophy. We take the philosophy of, if we sold it, we're going to make it. And so that was probably one of the number one foundation things that helped us and helped our brand grow, because if we came out with new products, they knew we were going to produce it and ship it, and you wouldn't have to wait 2 years before you saw that new product. So that was one of the major focuses that we had there. One of the other major focuses that we do, because our business is regulated by the Department of Commerce and or the Department of State, depending on which products we're shipping internationally, we took the approach that we're going to pull product for international customers the same way we would with somebody going with a shipment going to Texas. But then that product gets wrapped and put up in the racks and waits until we have a shipment ready for that particular customer. And so that allows that customer, especially in a highly back-ordered situation where that product is only available for this week before it gets shipped out and it's gone again, that allows those international customers to get the same availability of product as someone in the United States. And so that approach has really helped us in our success with our brand.
That's
Thanks
great.
for sharing that.
Yeah, I
Thanks
was
for
going to
sharing
say,
that.
Charlie, have you
Yeah.
seen similar scenarios there?
Yeah, actually, Tom and I see this or see opportunities that are similar very frequently. And really, to put it in more of a general sense, there are different types of customers and there's different categories of customers. Some are, ship to store, some are, ship to home and whatnot. And as time has gone on, it becomes a little bit harder for the same process to manage all of those properly. So we do see that, and we look forward to talking more about how we can do some of those things or enable customers to have different processes for different types of orders that are equally efficient. So thanks for asking.
And within each of those, what I wanted to add is within each of those categories Charlie talks about, customers' expectations are the same. They want the orders delivered quickly. They want complete visibility into the delivery cycle of the shipment, and they want that done efficiently as possible, usually no cost or low cost shipping. So really, Renae and other shippers really have their work cut out for them. They have a lot of expectations. It's tough to meet those especially in today's conditions with labor shortages and high transportation costs. It's never been tougher to meet those expectations. So.
Right, right. And I think the shift in customer expectations is just something that almost everyone can relate to, whether you're a varsity customer or any other type of customer or a consumer. So I know myself, I want something like as soon as I can get it, and it better be cheap. So it's wild how fast our expectations have just skyrocketed. And Renae, I wanted to ask you about Hornady and when you particularly started feeling that pressure of these customer expectations.
Where we first started seeing probably the most pressure was at the end of 2012. And that's when our brand really started to kick off and and be a lot more popular than it had been in years prior. Plus, there was also some unfortunate events. That was when there was a school shooting in Connecticut, and there was a lot of talk about restricting the Second Amendment right and those things. And so our business just went crazy. But and things then slowed down again, right? So whenever a Republican administration's in charge, there tends to be less panic. And so when there was a chance that there could be a Democratic administration with Hillary Clinton, there was another huge spike there before that election. And of course, she didn't win. So then we called that the Trump slump, right? So, we have those political cycles, and a lot of our competitors experience growth, but then they have the slumps and the down years where there isn't that huge consumer scare. And so we, again, with our new products, and our philosophy is it's never okay to be down. And so we're going to do whatever we can do, whether that's, working with current customers or maybe chasing other military contracts or things like that, because being down just because the consumer is comfortable is not acceptable. But then the biggest spike that we had was COVID. And I'm sure all of you remember March of 2020, you went to the grocery store and there was zero Lysol, cleaning departments were completely empty. And that's what happened with firearms and ammunition as well. And so we shipped literally almost everything that was in our warehouse. And so after that time, we didn't have inventory to ship orders and to ship complete. So we had to switch our focus from how do we ship when my inventory is turning 20 times? How do I ship as much as possible and do it economically? And that was a huge undertaking and trying to figure out what to do. Because also we had those consumers still wanting those t-shirts, hats, their warranty parts. And so we still had to pick all of those types of small orders, as well as the Bass Pro shields and distribution orders. And so it was very expensive during that time because we didn't have that inventory. And so we just had to ship it. And the call was get it out the door no matter how much it cost. And so that was a major challenge for us.
Wow. And what were some of those first signs that you started seeing internally where those processes like, hey, shoot, we should probably evolve these?
Yeah, I think probably the first one was how much the freight bills were, right? They were astronomical, but again, we made that business decision. But then the rest of it was, okay, this is not efficient. It's not efficient for our folks, our shipping folks, to have somebody picking a small part, and then the next order is a big pallet of ammunition, things like that, and looking and making our employees more efficient. But then the next level of that was how can we make it so that our customers are getting those products more efficiently, more complete, have the POs as complete as possible. And so those were the main three things there.
Makes sense. And, as you mentioned before, shipping everything as it becomes available just sounds like an incredibly huge lift. So that's hats off to you. But as we move into some of the nitty gritty pieces, let's understand how you started to change your day-to-day priorities as you notice these things that need to be enhanced. Like what started happening?
Well, a couple of different things because of my IT background. And when I worked in IT, I did know a lot of the things and how it worked on the back end, which really helped me when I'm meeting with IT to say, okay, this is the issue that we're having, and this is what I think that we should do to fix it. A lot of times I wasn't giving them an idea that wasn't feasible because I did have an idea of what was running in the background. And also keep in mind with the international shipments, there's the extra layers of paperwork and licensing and documentation there that's required. So we knew we had to have a more structured process for that as well. But I think one of the biggest things there is we had to make sure that our production was in line with what sales and shipping are doing. And so we didn't have a single production meeting for any of our divisions without someone from either sales manager or sales director in that. And because what would happen is, keep in mind, for example, one item of 9mm ammunition, one particular item had over 1 million boxes of ammunition on back order. So that's just the one SKU. So that's 25 million rounds of ammo and just the one. Well, you can't make 25 million rounds of ammo in a short time frame. We obviously do make that much, but not without sacrificing every other item. And so the production team couldn't just run to a back order report. They couldn't run to what a standard MRP would show, or safety stock, or any of those things, because the demand was through the roof, and there was no good decision that they could make. And so we put our sales team in those meetings to help them and say, okay, run 1 million rounds of this and then stop and run to the next one. And then on that side of it, we worked with IT to change how we allocate our products. And there's a lot of algorithms in there that help us with priorities, so that it gave us an idea of who should get this product. Because again, if only 30,000 boxes out of 1 million come available, it's really difficult to figure out who should get that. And so we did priorities such as, how old is their order? Did they place their booking orders in November for a May shipment? That's a 6-month-old order. And so they planned for that, right? So those get a higher priority. Other things like, you got shipped yesterday or you got shipped last week. And so if that customer had a shipment within the last 7 to 10 days, another customer who hadn't had a shipment is going to have a higher priority. And so we went through all of those meticulous things, and it was my sales managers, as well as the IT department, that assigned all of those priorities to us.
That's crazy.
And one of the other things, one of the other things that we did do as well is we dedicated our shipping folks to certain areas to help them with being more efficient as well. So if you are dedicated to a parcel, a FedEx parcel line, for instance, you're only going to pick small orders. So it might be T-shirts and hats. It might be 1 carton of ammunition and things like that. The warranty pieces. And then the other people who are picking the large orders are separated from them. And that way, they're not crawling all over each other in the shipping department trying to go after the same products. But it's more efficient within picking and the truck lines.
That's smart. And for anyone listening here, if you have questions about workflows, I am, anointing Hornady as king of workflow and algorithms, because that sounds very intricate and incredible. And one thing that you've mentioned a couple times, or you've alluded to, is how you align sales and logistics, and you're head of both of those things. That you don't see that every day. You don't see that very often, where someone heads up a department of sales and logistics. That's very unique.
It is unique, and I haven't always had both. Logistics was ran by the receiving department up until 2020, and so when that change happened, we thought, well, this is going to be interesting, but it has worked out. We don't have both the sales managers and the shipping manager report up to me, and so we're one big team, and so you don't have well, I just need to get my numbers, meaning the shipping manager, so that we can ship this product, and maybe they're not shipping those smaller orders because they're trying to hit a number. And the sales manager is saying, why aren't you shipping my customer? Why aren't you doing that? We're one big team, and they all report up to me. And so that eliminated all of that. And we have weekly meetings that include all of my management team, just to make sure that they can talk about that and make sure that everybody's doing what they need. And sometimes it's, hey, shipping manager, we need you to talk to this customer because they're requesting that we ship it in this manner, and that's not making sense for us. So can you help us with that? So it goes both ways, and it works out really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Charlie, you talk to a ton of customers on a weekly basis. Have you ever seen something like that?
I have not. But in her case, it makes perfect sense. I mean, they really have more demand than supply most of the time. And so the allocation would bring the two departments together. So sounds like a perfect scenario for Hornady.
Yeah, absolutely. So next point, let's move on to where Renae, you see teams get stuck or misaligned in a similar environment that scales so quickly.
For us, one of the things was we didn't have a dynamic decision making as far as routing goes. And so at that point in time, we were making either LTL, and we did some full truckload, but when you're shipping all the inventory that you have, rarely did we have full trucks to one point at that point. So everything for LTL was based on weight. So if it was over 1,200 pounds, it went via one carrier. If it was more than 200 pounds, but less than 1,200, it went a separate carrier. And, that works when you're in a crunch or when you're in a pinch, but it doesn't work as far as customer experience because they may not have a good business relationship with that carrier as far as receiving, or maybe they don't deliver to that area and it has to go to a third party truck, things like that. But also it might take 7 days to get there instead of 3. And so all of those things is an example of one of the things where we were stuck because it was, okay, how do we get to a dynamic decision making where my shipping folks can make intelligent decisions that is good for the customer experience?
Right. Charlie, where do you see it?
So, yeah, I mean, we found that customers in general need a flexible software solution, that enables them to easily set up rules that can alter workflow and have some visibility upstream so things can get done up there. It really, we end up seeing a lot of customers, and Renae was one of them initially, where they really had an end of the line kind of scenario there, and it's hard to kind of see past that. It's when we came in, I think, and laid out what some options are within the software that she already owned, that it really changed things, and that's not an uncommon situation for us to run into to really get some of the deeper savings. You've got to use these business rules, different flow processes, just basically maximizing efficiency.
Mm-hmm. And that is something, yeah, we've owned the Varsity software for a very long time. And so we didn't know what we didn't know, though. So when Tom and team came in to talk to us, it was, oh, you guys can do that? Oh, and it was a pleasant surprise of not having to change software vendors and not having to do any of that. It was already integrated with what we already owned. And so it was an easy transition to start using that product and helping us to eventually get it to where we are today, which is my folks can make dynamic decisions based on weight, based on time, based on price. And it's not always the cheapest. That's not always the answer. The answer is what's best for the customer.
Excellent. That paints a really good picture. And it sounds like Hornady has, more variability and edge cases and a great deal of reliance on the people that work there to fill in those gaps in process and systems on a overarching level. But let's dive more into like day to day. So what are some of the challenges your staff or your teams face while handling all these different variables?
Sure. It varies every day, honestly. And we also by times of the month. So Usually the first of the month is a lot busier because a lot of those customers say, ship it to me on the 1st or ship it to me on the 5th or things like that. Rarely does someone say, ship it to me on the 23rd of the month. But on any given day, the complexity there is there's a wide range of order sizes, as well as customer types. So I spoke about that a little bit earlier, and I talked about consumer versus customer. So we consider our customer the Bass Pros, the Shields, the Ma and Pa shops that we ship directly. The consumer is that one who's buying that T-shirt and the hat, and to kind of clarify that. And so we have that wide range of order sizes as well as those types. So we're doing those retail to consumer orders for T-shirts and hats and warranty parts. We're doing orders to small mom and pop shops that may be a back order situation where maybe 2 cartons of ammunition is available for them. So that's going to ship on a FedEx parcel line. And then you also have government orders coming through that have special restrictions and requirements that maybe it has to ship complete or it has to be labeled a little bit differently. And then of course your standard big box retailers, as well as international orders. And we're processing all of those types most every day.
Wow. Can you talk about the areas that specifically create the most friction and added costs that you see?
I would say the parcel side of things. We have a conveyor system that we put into our building 8 years ago now. And so, when you put in something like that, you think, oh, that's the end all be all and it's going to fix everything. And it did. It helped us with a lot of things. And but what it did do though was it slowed down the parcel processing. And so because you had small totes or small parcels, it mixed in that conveyor system with those large orders. We ended up having folks who were processing the large orders at the end of that conveyor, standing there waiting for their products because the smaller orders were intermingled in them. And so we basically took the parcel side of things and put it completely separate from that large conveyor system, and are processing them separately now. And one of the other things is, I mentioned the price of freight. Keep in mind when your inventory is turning up to 20 times, you're shipping the same customer sometimes in the same order twice in one day. And a lot of people who are listening to this may say, that is so crazy. How can you do that? And what would happen is when our staff comes in at 5:30 in the morning, there would be product available, and maybe it was a pallet worth of product available. They would process that, but then later in the afternoon, more inventory had come into the distribution center from packaging throughout what was being packed that day. And because that order was allocated the prior night by one of my sales teams, it comes up as available to ship again. And so it was shipped via parcel a second time. And so that was a challenge to try and navigate. How do I have 2 tracking numbers on the same shipment and the same invoice? And so those were definitely some things that were friction and inefficient. But then also, of course, not being able to optimize the freight and make good decisions about who the carrier should be based on weight and size of pallets. Most of our product is very heavy, and so we weigh out pallets before they dim out. But it's still something that we had to try and figure out how to make this better. But those were the main friction and inefficiencies there.
Oh, so just easy things to point
Yeah.
out. No, very, very complex. Charlie, I wanna make sure I ask you and Tom, do you guys see this with other customers as well? I kind of sound like a broken record, but I want to get your take too, to get more of an overarching picture.
Yeah, sure. The first thing that crosses my mind is a lot of the solutions that Hornady took advantage of to save that $1 million in freight it can't be done without deep integration, right? So we're actually communicating. We haven't talked a lot about integration. I think we're going to get into it further here as we progress in this call. But deep integration makes such a big difference. I mean, we're going back and forth with the ERP multiple times in different spots. It depends which modules someone's using and what their goal is. But the integration is a big important part of it because we're going back and forth and we can solve a lot of things. And that integration, again, I'm a broken record at this point, not end of the line, upstream. It allows them to do things like optimization for us to tell them which carton should be used in some customer situations, to do the rating, to do things like that. And that all comes back to the right interface at the right time. So that's my input on that.
I'd like to add that the integration, you hit it on the head, Charlie. The integration we had at Hornady was on the back end. I see a lot of other companies where they'll plan their production, they'll plan their allocations, they'll release the orders based on a production plan and a shipment plan. In some cases, like Hornady's case, they wanted to be more dynamic. They didn't want to necessarily control everything on the front end. They wanted their back end to have capabilities, and they needed deep integration to make that happen. We had an end-of-line system where the shippers, as they ship product, they would scan an order, and that order is going obviously to a specific customer. The system, the TMS system, would look back into the WMS and the ERP to see what the status of other orders, if any, were that were going to the same customer. And if there were opportunities for consolidation, a screen would pop up and allow the user to say, yeah, I want to combine these 3 orders together and ship them as one entity, cut down my cost, and get the orders all to the customer in one shipment. Or maybe not do that. They had the ability on the back end to dynamically consolidate or not consolidate shipments. And I think that worked out well for them because of their dynamic nature of their business. And Renae, would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right. Like we don't plan a shipping schedule based on production plan. There's a lot of moving parts, no pun intended there, on making ammunition, and sometimes we didn't have the components. So, if we had a production plan and then the powder is late, you can't run it. So that derails your entire shipping plan as well. So that's why we don't do it that way. And the key thing there was making sure that the customer experience was good. And by putting that on the back end so that our shipping folks could make those good decisions and say, okay, normally I would pick ABF, for example, but maybe that trailer is full and I don't have another trailer to come pick it up. I can pick another carrier right now and still get that customer that product. And they can see with the freight rate shopper, they can see, okay, that might only be a $25 difference, or it might be $1,000 difference, and it gives them the flag that says, hey, I need to go ask my supervisor, what do they think? So empowering those people to make those decisions is huge because they know what's happening in their area. And so being able to make that decision is huge. And you mentioned the $1 million in freight. We did save over $1 million on our freight bills, especially on the master packing side, which is where you talked about shipping multiple orders in one package. So instead of shipping 4 separate purchase orders and 4 separate FedEx packages, I could put them in one, pay that minimum fee once, and get that shipment to that location and pay that shipping fee just once. So that was a huge savings for us.
That's amazing. You don't hear the $1 million number thrown around often. So that's very, very cool. I knew this would happen. We are running a little bit low on time. So let's cover this next section very quickly. Renae, if you had to pick the process changes that made the most meaningful difference, what would that be? And you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but.
The biggest change would be the master packing that I just mentioned. Just because you saw that immediate change from 1 month to the next, as far as when you got your bills from the parcel carriers. But also on the LTL side, we saw a big change there as well, because it's not just going on weight like we had before. Now it's going on dimensions, weight, location, and choosing the right lanes based on that freight rate shopper, and making those right decisions. And we also, as inventory was able to build up more, we're also able now to stage orders for customers. So we may only release a customer such as Bass Pro, for example, once a week, but we've staged for them every single day. And so again, then once we finalize those orders, we can make a good decision on what freight carrier we take.
Perfect. Thanks for the summary. I appreciate it. So let's move on to systems and technology. So Tom, I know you were able to visit Hornady on site. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love it when customers go back after the implementation and they go back and they do a review and say, what can we do better? Let's look at our workflow. A lot of companies just focus in on getting a system live and getting it functioning, and then they live with it. What Renae and her team did is they brought us in and we just spent a day walking through processes. They had ideas of what they definitely knew where their bottlenecks were, but it was really cool to spend a day walking through, discussing, just totally focused on what we could do to streamline their processes. And I think after a day, we were all convinced that we had some great ideas. It was really fun and exciting. And I think over the next 6 months, I backed away from the project, but we went ahead and put some engineers from Varsity on it, and Renae and her team saw it through, and everything seemed to work really well. And they just continue to kind of follow that process. So I think more companies need to do what Renae's team did, and to kind of redo post implementation, re-examination, and critique of their systems and see what they can do to gain efficiencies. And it was worked great for Hornady. And so that's what I would say about it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but agree with Tom on that. And, I think the big savings and labor and other efficiencies is moving some of the advanced logic to your day-to-day processes and eliminating every customer is different, but in many cases there's employees making detailed scenarios, have detailed decisions, having to look at a bunch of different scenarios. And in general, our software, if you choose to have it do this, it guides their decisions, to say the least.
Yeah, and I want to just put one spotlight on Renae real quick. I remember you talked about rate shopping a bit in our discussion leading up to this. Could you touch on that quickly before we move on?
Sure. So again, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? So we were doing everything on the LTL side by weight. And so implementing a rate shopper, we also added a carrier in there, but implementing that rate shopper so that we had 3 LTL carriers, and that allowed us to make really good decisions based on what the customer prefers, because sometimes the customer wants a certain carrier. But then other than that, it's how quickly can it get to them, and still make a good decision as far as how much it costs. And so that is a really big piece for us, and we use it every time we process an order now.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the last piece here. So right before the rapid fire. So we'll do rapid fire and then ultra rapid fire to stay within the time limit. So I want to talk about where teams should focus versus where maybe you tend to see people waste time. And Renae, let's start with you.
I would say, and I've mentioned this a couple times, but empowering your folks to make the decisions that they can make, but don't pressure them to make a decision that they can't or that they're uncomfortable with. So, if it's a transit time and a price within a limit, we set limits as to what they could choose without approval. That enables them to just keep going and not stop, slow down, and have to ask questions a lot. And so, then they aren't worried about making a shipping decision that's either going to affect the customer or cost the company a lot of money. And we've provided those guidelines to them based on their role. So if they're a picker and your parcel, you have these guidelines. If you're a picker and your LTL, you have a different set of guidelines because you're picking different types of products. And then, of course, if you're a processor where you're palletizing and finishing those big orders, you have yet another set of guidelines. And so just making sure that they all had that for their individual roles also is a big thing for us, and where it helped them focus and not waste as much time.
Fair. Good points. All right, Charlie, what about you?
Sure. Coming at it from a sales and marketing standpoint, talking to prospects, it's always helpful to us if the customer has really given some thought to, and even maybe gone as far as talking to users for input on what would make your life easier, what would help us get things out the door quicker. And you might be surprised some of the feedback that you get. And so you could talk about that in a committee or a pre-demo scenario and ask the questions of a vendor, would your software do this? Do you have any ideas about that? That I think really brings brings clarity to the process, and it makes it a bit more comprehensive. Because sometimes we get people that say, hey, our FedEx system's not integrated right, or they're not supporting it, but they don't think about other things that could be done. It's not just a replacement of the UPS link API or the FedEx or a PC system that's now, no longer supported. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Charlie. Tom? Oh, did we lose Tom?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, so short and sweet, we see too many customers rely on a single carrier. In this day and age, it's critical that you have multiple carriers to choose from, and you use rate shopping and carrier selection logic to look at transit times, look at service levels, look at performance, and make the decision that's best for your customers in your situation. So adding multiple carriers to your system is critical. And that's all I've got on that one.
That's a good one. All right, thank you. All right, so let's go on to the rapid fire. Lessons only you learn by doing. So let's start with you, Renae. What would you do differently if you could?
Number one, I would have asked the questions a lot sooner with Varsity, because I think we could have implemented it quite a long time ago. So that's number one. But in the main part of the project, we had 2 main DCs, a main DC and a secondary DC, and we implemented all of this freight rate shopping and master packing at one time. And I probably would have split it out and handled the main DC first, just because it was the products that are shipping out of that DC are more standard carton sizes and things like that. And so it was easier to implement. Whereas the other DC was, it's a lot of small parts and pieces, and we had to get a lot of information into our ERP system in order for that to work. So it just made the implementation a little bit longer. It's all done now and it's all good. But I wish we would have split it up, because I think we could have seen the effects of our $1 million in freight savings a lot faster.
Mm-hmm. I've always been a big fan of the phased approach, and I think that's what Renae is talking about. Varsity set up the modules within our system where you can add on modules as you grow. We have a lot of customers that'll start off doing the basics and then just add on and phase in different processes as they grow. That works out great. I'm a big fan of that.
Absolutely. I always say crawl, walk, run. Um, that's what I always say to my team. So perfect. All right. So let's zoom out a little bit to the next rapid fire question. What do you think matters most when you're scaling an operation like this? Renae?
The number one thing is making sure that your partners can scale with you. And so like I said, we've had Varsity for a long, long time. And they were able to handle our 10 times growth without issue. And so that's really important, because if we grow and Varsity wasn't able to handle it, then that's a different problem. And so being able to have that is awesome. And the other piece of it is not just about volume when you're scaling, but you have to be able to still have the speed. You still have to have flexibility and processing and the speed of order processing. Because again, if you can't process those orders quickly, it doesn't matter if you have the inventory or any of those other things if your systems are slowing you down.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Charlie?
Sure. So from a scaling standpoint, you want a system that's going to be fast, right? And sub-second really is what the processing time should be in terms of the computer processing. But scaling means a lot of things. I mean, licensing comes to mind, like what Renae would, share that, she can set as many shipping systems up as she wants, stations, so to speak. There's unlimited access across the enterprise to Varsity. So you really want to have minimal, if not zero, licensing issues. A lot of systems, as well as Varsity, we actually have a very small charge to add a whole new location somewhere. And there's no charge to add shipping locations and to add carriers, add carriers and change rules and stuff. So that's what comes to mind when we talk about scaling.
I'd like to add that as you scale, you'll have a lot of times different processes or change processes where you might want to do things a little bit different for a subset of your orders. Integration's huge. Being able to have systems that tie nicely or fit nicely or tightly integrate to your ERP or your WMS is key. I mean, some of the things that Renae did would not be possible to do with standalone systems. You could do it would take forever. Speed would not be there. Renae chose a system that was tightly integrated, ran on the same platform, and she can expand into other areas as she sees fit. And I think that's key. You need a nice, clean system that allows integration with your ERP and WMS.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Great. And then before we jump into Q&A, please submit your questions last minute. If you have them, please submit them. Let's do some final advice. So Renae, let's start off with you. What advice do you have for teams in similar situations or just in general?
I would say ask a lot of questions, both internally as well as with your vendors, because you may think you know everything about how you process something. I think that I may know everything, which I don't. But you got to ask the people who actually process the orders and the shipments to get the true, because there's always it's different if you do this type of thing. And so get those people involved when you're looking at a software solution, because those are always the gotchas. And always get references and try to see if there's similarities in your business and whomever the references are. If they're shipping helicopters and we're shipping ammunition, they're not the same, so you got to talk to them and ask a lot of questions. And with that, don't be afraid to ask as many questions as possible. You're not stupid if you're asking questions. You gotta find out.
Perfect. Charlie, what about you?
Yeah, sure.
I would say that each ERP or WMS is very different. And it's imperative that you are talking to vendors that have good experience with that ERP. JD Edwards, Infor XA, Infor or BPIX. There's just so many different scenarios and there are difficulties, and then you've got the middleware scenario that just make sure that that they know what they're doing, because people, I think salespeople could want to not talk about that very often, very much, if they're not really familiar with your ERP. So that's my 2 cents.
And what I would add is focusing in on pain points. Always improve your system. Always focus in on your pain points. Do process reviews, and see what you can do. Talk to your vendors and look for ways to improve your system. Different workflows, more integration, different software modules that your vendors may have available. Pay off big time. So don't stop improving and focusing on process reviews and your pain points.
Perfect. All smart advice. And crawl, walk, run, please. Much easier to scale up than roll back. So don't feel pressured to do everything at once. All right. So that pretty much ends the main spiel here, but we do have some questions that came in. So as an absolute final reminder, if you do have any questions, please submit them. We have excellent experts on the call today. So let me find the first one here. When Hornady started to add capabilities to their shipping software, how did you build the internal case for the investments before you had the data savings to show for it? And Renae, that's for you.
Okay. The good part is with that is that I didn't really have to build a case. Some of the things that we were doing, like the shipping via weight only, and shipping multiple packages to the same customer on the same day, we knew that was not efficient and expensive, and so there wasn't a whole lot that I had to do to get the case there. And so it was really then we could have the funds. It's really then about how much more efficient do you think this could make us? And so that's the approach that Hornady took. And I'm very thankful that our management and our senior management team has that approach, because it's a no-brainer. And so we didn't have to do a lot of casework to get the money.
That's nice. Let's see. I think this next one also goes to Renae, so I'll just say this one right now. I also lead sales and logistics as well for my company, Wild. There's 2 of you. Where do you see the biggest disconnects between what customers want and what operations can deliver realistically?
I think the biggest piece of that, or the biggest disconnect, is making sure that production is in line with that. Like I said, sales and shipping is definitely most important to get it out. But if you don't have production, if production is disconnected from that, it doesn't really matter, because you've got to have the product to be able to ship it. And so that's probably the biggest disconnect. And then as far as what customers want, again, we take that approach that our production is running what the customer demand is, not necessarily what's easy for them to produce, or what's on their production schedule. So we adjust that accordingly. And so there's a lot of other companies out there that don't. And so that would be the other disconnect there, and getting the customers the product that they want. If production's not making it, they're not going to get it.
Perfect. Thank you. This one I think would be for Tom or Charlie. So chime in. Does Varsity's order consolidation require any manual review, or is it fully automated?
I'm gonna let Tom take that.
It can run either way. We do our modules or APIs that allow you to run automatic with no screen. We make the decision for you and automatically do the consolidation, or we can allow the user to select from the screen. So either way, everybody's a little bit different. So we offer both options.
All right, and we did have one that just came in, and it relates to rate shopping, which I love. So Harley, I'm going to ask you this question. We have a current customer on here that doesn't rate shop with Varsity, which is wild to me. How would they go about adding that, and is it hard?
It's not hard at all. With Varsity, there's nothing to buy for that. It's part of our base package. And the question would be, what's the goal of rate shopping? We see more and more folks that want it from a web cart, upstream up on their website, and we can do that in real time. Others want to look at rates, say in the traffic or the warehouse office or shipping office, and make some decisions there. And then, I think the traditional thought of rate shopping is down at shipping. We caution people on that depending on how much volume they have and whatnot. But it's not difficult. It's a call to a rating engine that brings back whatever they want to come back, next day air to next day air to next day air, or ground versus 2-day across 2 different carriers. So no, it's not difficult, and it's highly suggested. But you got to think about where it's going to be the most efficient in your operation.
Perfect. And I think we have time for one more. How do you set up an on-site visit with Varsity?
You reach out and contact us, and someone will give you a call back, and we first do a quick pre-demo call, or we understand we learn the interests and what they're looking to accomplish, gather some details so we are prepared for the demo, and then we get it scheduled and do it. It takes about an hour and a half, and it's our pleasure to show anyone the software that wants to see it.
Amazing. Well, okay. We are pretty much out of time. So I just wanted to thank everyone who joined us live. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully you found a couple tidbits of information that'll be valuable to you and your shipping operations. And, if you have any questions at all, I believe the contact information for everyone here is on the screen. So feel free to send those. And if we didn't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you within the next day or so. And this is recorded, so I think it will be available. So if you want to watch back again, you can. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.